This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
There's a nip in the air. It's the chill of fear and despair that is all too familiar to me. The recent Columbia graduate student Mahmoud Khalil's detention by Immigration and Customs Enforcement on Saturday has brought back my most tormenting childhood nightmares as a child of Holocaust survivors in communist Romania in the 1950s. Those are the words of our next guest, Marianne Hirsch, Professor Emerita at Columbia University. In her recent article headlined, "I grew up under a terrifying authoritarian regime. Mahmoud Khalil's arrest is right out of their playbook." The article was published in the Jewish newspaper, The Forward.
Marianne Hirsch joins us today in studio. She's the author of several books, including The Generation of Post-Memory, Writing and Visual Culture After the Holocaust. Professor Hirsch, welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. You said the conditions for Mahmoud Khalil's arrest were created by Columbia, and then put that into the larger context, you having come out of authoritarian Romania.
Well, I grew up in Romania until the age of 12. My parents were survivors of the Romanian Holocaust. And when Mahmoud Khalil was abducted, when Rumeysa Ozturk was abducted, and I watched those videos, it brought back these feelings of terror that I grew up with as a child, the helplessness in front of seemingly all-powerful forces that couldn't be stopped, that were arbitrary, and that had only the barest rationale for, or no rationale for, these arrests. I think the condition for these arrests have been created by our universities. Unfortunately, Columbia, where I teach and where I've taught for 20 years, was the model for this. And the way they've been created is, first of all, by accepting and then promoting the big lie that anti-Semitism is driving protests against the brutal genocidal war in Gaza, of Israel on Gaza, that these are anti-Semitic protests of excluding and suspending student groups, of draconian measures of punishment, but also of casting protesters as terrorists, which is now expanding. And what I'm seeing is spread is the kind of helplessness that I felt as a child and that I picked up from my surroundings, the fear of speaking, the suspicion that one can be denounced, that there are lists out there, that we don't know who's on the lists, that there's nothing that can be done to help. And I'm seeing my students silence themselves, being afraid to speak, wondering who might be denouncing them, who might be making lists. And let's be real. I mean, Mahmoud Khalil was chosen by Columbia to be a mediator between the administration and the student protesters. And then he was denounced by, unfortunately, I have to say, people at Columbia. There's an Intercept report that I'm sure you're aware of, that there's a group of parents, alumni, and even some faculty who are making lists of students who could be deported or who are aliens, enemies of the state, of the university. And this idea of denunciation is something that I've carried from my childhood, because my father would often come home saying that he was asked by his superiors at work whether he would name the names of people who, whatever. I mean, there was always a reason for this, and how he refused, and how, you know, he gave up some possibilities of advancement by refusing to name those names. So this is something I was carrying. But there is a difference. You know, we have laws. This is illegal, and there are possibilities of appeal. And there are also ways in which this narrative, this big lie of rampant anti-Semitism that universities have accepted and even promoted by forming task forces on anti-Semitism. I think there are people who are now seeing, Jerry Nadler is a great example, that this might not have been such a good idea, because it's brought upon us this terrible repression under the guise of fighting anti-Semitism. And I think people are now saying that this is not just morally completely wrong and corrupt, but that it's also not good for Jews, certainly, but that it's not good for anybody, and that the reason for this was never to fight anti-Semitism, but it was to decimate academia.
And if you could talk, you've also written a piece on the extent to which and the speed with which Colombia completely capitulated or submitted to the Trump administration's demands. You wrote a piece headlined, "There's a bleak historical explanation for why Colombia's capitulation to Trump is so concerning," in which you write, quote, "We are not living in early Nazi Germany, but although as a student of fascism and the Holocaust, I've learned to be careful with such comparisons, some resonances are too obvious to ignore." What are those resonances?
Well, the resonances are that autocratic regimes go after education. I mean, certainly higher education. Why? Well, academic freedom, self-governance, inquiry, open inquiry, the possibility that we might promote a narrative of history that is true but that doesn't conform to the vision of the autocrat. All of those things are extremely threatening, and we've seen it not just in early Nazi Germany, but certainly in Hungary, in Turkey, in India, the crackdown on universities. But what's more concerning to me is the response of universities and how they've not just anticipatory obedience, but really anticipatory capitulation, first through these task forces and accepting the anti-Semitism narrative, but then agreeing agreeing to the demands, which are completely illegal and unreasonable demands, in the hope of pacifying the autocrat, which I think everybody already should know that that is not how you can deal. So what I'm not seeing is solidarity among universities, the willingness or the eagerness to fight back and to say, no way, we're not going to stand for this.
And finally, Marianne, you've worked on the transmission of memories of violence across generations, what you call post-memory. How do you see that? You've expressed concerns, in particular, Mahmoud Khalil's unborn child, the children of Gaza. How do you see this kind of being acted out now and in the future, all the violence that we see happening now? And also, I should mention the hundreds of student visas that we know of international students that have been revoked.
Well, this revocation, just to start with that, completely arbitrary, and students are not even informed, and the university is not informed. They find out through the online system, and then the ostracism of these students, which is what happened to me as a child, and certainly to my parents, of being denationalized, of being ostracized and publicly shamed for, as a child, I was a pioneer with the red scarf, and I saw some of my classmates their red scarves were forcibly removed in front of the entire school when their parents applied for visas to leave, the country. So that's, something I carry as a child. But I'm also carrying what I call post-memory, which is memories of violence across generations that I inherited from my parents' stories. These are vicarious, but they feel like memories, and that's why I thought I needed a term for these very powerful fears and terrors that children, that we inherit for experiences that we didn't ourselves live, but that we feel like we remembered. So I guess the fear right now is that it's not only the children right now, but it's it's the future generations how they will receive this moment of fear that is spreading across the country, with people losing visas, losing status, even the stories of green card holders, but citizens possibly, and naturalized citizens like me, possibly being denationalized and like you. So I think the reverberations of this
20 seconds.
Could reach future generations, and what we're transmitting is extremely concerning to me, and I hope we're transmitting resistance, resilience, and refusal.